this is Mel. Here are my top 5 tips for great vocal mixing. Number 1, get to know your compressor. If you need a quick reminder of what compression actually is, I got you. Essentially, a compressor lowers the loudest parts of any bit of audio without lowering the entire volume of the whole signal. If a compressor only lowers the parts of the audio that are too loud, how do we decide what's too loud? We use the threshold. What's above the threshold will be compressed and what's below will remain uncompressed. Now that you've decided which parts are too loud, how do you know how much to compress them by? Well, that's the ratio dial. You might find that compressing a vocal take actually lowers the volume of the whole thing, and that's fine. That's what makeup gain is for. And the neat is how the compressor moves between the compressed parts of the audio and the uncompressed parts of the audio. When it comes to compression, it's really important that you simply have a play and find out which settings work best for you and your recording setup. Just let me show you how much of a difference it really can make.
Without compression, the quieter bits of my vocal are lost amongst the instrumental with compression switched on. Both compressors are doing something slightly different. The first one is doing this, and the second one is doing this.
Tip number 2. Automation.
I love to automate my vocal processing. Here is one example. I automate the wet output of the reverb. In example number 2, I'm increasing the formant over time to create the anticipation before the drop. And in example number 3, I'm automating the amount of signal I am sending to my auxiliary channel, which has extra effects like delay and reverb.
Number 3, making sure that vocal is nice and broad sounding.
There are a number of different ways that you can broaden your sound and add more presence. For example, I'm using a Haas effect. Here is it without.
It's been 2 days since I woke up to that text.
And here is it with.
It's been 2 days since I woke up to that text.
You might want to use it sparingly, so perhaps in a chorus, but it certainly will add more presence and punch wherever you do use it. Another way of doing this is by using a chorus or a vocal doubler like this. Any of these plugins though should be used in conjunction with double tracking.
Number 4, and probably my favourite, creative vocal layers.
Something fun that I did for this track in particular, I created a duplicate layer of the outro ad-libs and I put it through a distortion. Typically you might have a saturation on a vocal to warm it up a little bit, but you might not go for something quite as distorted as what I've gone for. But I thought I would show you anyway, just in case it gave you something new to try. Something else that I like to do in parts that I'd like to emphasise, and again, sparingly, I'll take a section of the audio, duplicate the track, and add a pitch shifter.
We were friends, but
In a similar vein, try this with a formant shift.
we were friends.
Number 5, and the one that I think is the most important. It's really important to remember that you should definitely have a reference track to give you a steer of where you might like to take your mix, but don't get too tied to the sound because the studio monitors are different, the microphone is different, and also the room is going to be treated very differently. You might have no treatment in your room, but a big professional studio, they probably have a lot of very expensive soundproofing. The vocal might have been recorded on a microphone that cost a couple £100 compared to one that cost about 12 grand. There's such a broad spectrum when it comes to equipment. I really hope you found these tips helpful, and if you'd like to hear more of my music, then click the link below to listen to my EP, Angels Never Die. And if you want more music production content, do come over and join me on my YouTube channel. I post weekly videos and do monthly live streams, creating music and listening to yours too.